After about 600 feet climbing up here. Wow, look at that. "12 miles and 3,600 feet elevation gain and about the same loss." Cue the fish jump. Gotta love that. I think I saved the best for last. Hey everybody, just starting out at the trailhead of a new hike. This is a 3-day hike in the Anaconda Pintler wilderness. I'm pretty excited to be here and get to explore this area. I've been wanting for a couple of years to come and take a look at this. Anaconda Pintler Loop, it's called. This trip will be only about 24 miles over 3 days, so very gentle mileage, although still a fair amount of elevation gain. It's about noon on an absolutely beautiful day. Just a few wispy clouds up high and not much chance of precipitation on this hike. I once ran into a guy in Glacier Park who was just finishing up the Continental Divide Trail, and I asked him, of all the awesome places that you've been and seen, what would you want to go back and see again? And his answer was he would want to go back and see the Anaconda Pintler area. So I'm pretty excited to come and take a look at it myself. Thanks for coming along. Just to give you an idea of where in the world this hike occurs, this is the state of Montana, and you can see Missoula here and Butte here, and the hike is just a little south of Anaconda there. And this is a little closer in. Again, there's Butte. Missoula is just off the map there. And this is a unique hike in the sense that the trip to and from the trailhead is half the fun. I get to go off on this scenic byway. It's the Anaconda Pintler Scenic Byway, which I would strongly recommend anybody do who's traveling between Yellowstone and Glacier National Park. It's conveniently located about halfway through between those two. And Phillipsburg is a really interesting little ghost town. I should say it's a mining town that was nearly a ghost town and has been able to revive itself. And the hike is actually right down here. The trailhead is actually down here, about 4 miles past Moose Lake. And the trail takes off this direction. It's a loop hike. Goes up here, and there'll be a possible side trip to Edith Lake. Not sure if I'm going to want to climb that extra 500 feet, I think it is, just to see that. But the main trail comes on up to Johnson Lake, and the end of Johnson Lake is where it connects with the Continental Divide Trail, which I'll be on just for about 4 miles or so. That comes up here to Pintler Pass, and then there's a little side trip here to Oreamnos Lake. Not sure if I'm saying that right. That's where I think I might stay the first night, but then taking off on day 2 down here to the junction at Pintler Creek and on up to this unnamed pass, and that's where I would leave the Continental Divide Trail and continue on this way into this basin, and then probably do a side trip to Ripple Lake and Kelly Lake to see them, on up over Bitterroot Pass and down to Little Johnson Lake, and might spend the second night there or climb up to the Phyllis Lakes and camp there the second night. And then day 3 would be on back out this drainage, which is the middle fork of Rock Creek, back to the trailhead. Well, as you can probably see, this area was pretty well burnt out. There was a massive wildfire that came through here about 2 years ago. And sometimes it can be kind of hot and miserable hiking on a sunny summer day when everything is burnt over and there's no shade and not really good places to sit down even. But there are advantages. The fireweed is very beautiful when that's in bloom. And sometimes you get to see things that you wouldn't normally see if all the trees and brush were in the way. I think that's up towards Edith Lake, up on that bench there. Getting a little farther up in elevation, and again, one of the benefits of the burned area, being able to see around. This is just about to where that trail to Edith Lake is going to take off. And here is the magnificent setting of Edith Lake. Nobody here. Unfortunately, the fire did come through here and did quite a bit of damage. So there's not really good campsites, but it's a beautiful view nonetheless. It's a little after 4 and I've made it back to the junction with the trail to Edith Lake. That side trip cost me a little bit more time than I expected it would. So now I've got about 5 miles and 1,500 feet elevation gain or so to get to the original goal that I'd set of getting to Oreamnos Lake tonight. So it'll be a little bit of a push to make it there, but we'll see. So far I've run into 3 couples, so moderately busy but not terrible. My only concern about getting to Orianna Lake is if there's a lot of people camped already around it and maybe there aren't a lot of spots available, that might be a problem. About halfway to Johnson Lake, and boy, you really can see everything with the area all burnt over. Some beautiful rock formations. Just amazing. Pretty close to Johnson Lake, and I believe that V there is Pintler Pass where I'm headed, which would make this the East Pintler Peak. And I got a nice little bridge across this stream here. Here's Johnson Lake. Thought I'd give you another view of Johnson Lake. Certainly a beautiful setting. That just to the left is Rainbow Pass. And this might seem like an obvious place for me to spend the night, but there's been too much camping around Johnson Lake, so there's a rule about not camping anywhere close to the shores. And I think I still got enough energy to make it up over Pintler Pass. Up beyond Johnson Lake, towards Pintler Pass, mosquitoes are pretty thick, but the view just gets better and better. And that is the pass I'm headed for. This is a beautiful meadow. Which is probably why the mosquitoes are so thick here. Well, it turns out that trail that I thought was the trail to Pintler Pass wasn't. Thankfully, I ran into a member of the trail crew who was just coming back. It was just a spur trail to a stock holding area, and he turned me back and got me back on the right trail, which is gorgeous, by the way, after all that day spent walking through the burn. Incidentally, I did want to say what an awesome job the trail crew has done on that trail. It's actually a volunteer crew from the Montana Wilderness Association, and I ran into them and was able to thank them personally, and I suggest you do too, because I can't believe what they accomplished in terms of I didn't have to step over a single blowdown through all of that burn, and they've done a whole bunch of building of trail and building bridges over streams. Just amazing what they've accomplished in such a short time. Just above Johnson Lake now, and actually on the CDT for the short bit that I will be. I stumbled on this just beautiful meadow right below Pintler Pass, and if I had any sense in my head I would probably stay here for the night, but it is a little early and the mosquitoes are pretty thick, so if I did stay I think they would swarm me. But that's the pass. It's a pretty nice spot. I love the feeling of coming up to a high mountain pass. It's almost like Christmas morning. There's first the relief that you finally got there, knowing all the work you put into getting there. But mainly it's just like opening up a new present, knowing there's going to be some fantastic view on the other side. But you don't get to see it until you get there. That's that meadow I was just in. And there's looking back the way I came up today. Just over that ridge to the right and before the mountain peak is Edith Lake. And there's the CDT sign. Down there you can see all the way to I believe it's the Big Hole Valley. Hey, squirrel. Well, I've made it to the junction of the Oreamnos Lake Trail, the little spur trail that goes off to the lake. Hiking into the sun now. I made it to Orianna, and it's just a little before 8 o'clock. And this one is definitely worth the hike. Beautiful lake. And check out those rock formations. That is awesome. It looks like some fantastic dried up waterfall. I bet there is water flowing down that in the spring, and it's probably pretty amazing. You certainly don't have to hunt around for where to set up camp. This one's a no-brainer. Looks like I'm the only one here and have the best spot to myself. And the lake is right there. Okay, well, I got camp all set up and pretty happy about that because there's some dark clouds coming in. I don't know that it's really going to pour or anything. There was only a 10% chance of rain, but I wanted to get it set up so that I could dive in there if I had to. So final tally for the day is 10.7 miles and 2,700 feet elevation gain, counting the side trip to Edith Lake. And overall, pretty good day. Everything's working good. So far, no physical complaints. And this Oreamnos Lake is just gorgeous, so I'm really happy to make it here. Mosquitoes are out and pretty active. That's why I've got these clothes on. It's not that cold, but I'm probably gonna eat something quick and then hit the sack. In case you're wondering about the food that I'm eating, I never like to eat a big dehydrated meal the first night out. For some reason I don't seem to have enough appetite for that, so I usually eat cold. In fact, if I'm just doing an overnight, I'll have a cold dinner, cold breakfast, and not even bring a stove. I did bring a stove and actual meals on this trip for the second night and this first breakfast, but for tonight I have a sesame seed bagel with peanut butter, honey, and bacon bits. You can get shelf-stable bacon bits from Costco in a huge bag, and they're actually really good. So that's my dinner for tonight. See you tomorrow. Well, breakfast this morning is oatmeal. I take the instant oatmeal and repackage it into a freezer bag so that I can do the freezer bag cooking, and threw in a handful of dried fruit, and this is a cozy that'll keep it warm while it's rehydrating. And then I have some instant coffee, which is Mount Hagen instant coffee. I highly recommend. And since I like my coffee sweet, I have some cubes of raw sugar I'll throw in there. Mosquitoes are pretty bad this morning, and they were last night too. I took a chance and didn't take the bug internet on this trip, and I'm regretting it. I think I pushed it a little too far, but I got plenty of bug juice and a head net, so I'm okay. I'm interested to see this new stove. This is the first time I've used this in the wild. It's the MSR Pocket Rocket, which has been around for a long time, of course. I used to use a Snow Peak stove, which worked pretty good for me, but BPL just had a review of stoves, and they talked about that particular stove had a problem with wind, gusts messing it up. So actually, I liked my stove until I read that review. As soon as I read that review, I remembered, that's right, I have had that problem. And the Pocket Rocket was one of the highest rated ones. I got the one that doesn't have the Petso igniter. I think those are a waste of both money and weight because they wear out so quickly. But this one seems to work well. Just a little bit of a gust or a slight breeze this morning and no problem. So and let that rehydrate. Well, today it looks like I get to lose about 1,000 feet, climb back up about 800 feet, lose 400 feet, and then climb back up 400 feet, and then lose another 400 feet. So it's going to be a real roller coaster. It's only about 10 or 12 miles, depending on how far I decide to go. And got all day, so the trick is to not push too hard and take my time and enjoy being out here, right? I'm all packed up. It's about 8 o'clock, ready to head out, and kind of sad to be leaving this beautiful lake behind, but I won't mind leaving the cloud of mosquitoes behind. Back to the junction between the Orianna Spur Trail and the main trail, and this is the beginning of the big drop down. I gotta tell you, I just love this first couple hours in the morning. I have so much energy from a good night's sleep, and it's so thrilling to be out here. It just fills me with joy. Here's the junction with Pintler Creek, which means I'm done with the big drop down in elevation and get to start doing the big climb up. It's a simple rock hop across, and by the way, I should mention that I've been incredibly lucky so far. I haven't had to get my feet wet at all. Yesterday and today so far. Every stream crossing has been either bridged or easy rock hop like that one. And even though I brag often about being able to walk through fords with my trail runners, and it's no big deal, the fact is that it's always better to stay dry if you can, so I'm pretty happy about that. Well, when I was not sure if I would be able to find a good campsite at Oreamnos Lake, I was saying to someone that there was no good fallback if Orianna didn't work. But now I see that isn't true. There's this big beautiful campsite down by that junction with Pintler Creek, and it is right next to the creek. So in some ways this might even have been better, although hard to argue with the beauty of Oreamnos Lake. And that, I believe, is where the trail takes off and starts climbing. Check out these amazing boulders that are all around just as I'm starting to climb. Awesome. Starting to get a bit more alpine as I'm working my way up this trail. Gaining elevation pretty fast. Well, I've accomplished the climb. Looks like I've gotten to the junction here. Got the CDT sign. And there's the junction sign. I guess I can understand why this pass isn't named, even though it's a high point on a ridge. It doesn't have much of a view. It's pretty though, in its own way. That's looking back towards the Pintler Peaks, the way I'll be heading. Well, I was wrong just now with that last trail junction, thinking it was that high point on the ridge. Turns out that's actually about another half a mile on, and looks like I get to have just this gentle stroll through this high bench area that's called Elk Park. And it's a really lovely area, so I don't mind a bit. So that is East Pintler Peak off to the right. That's the pass that I came over last night. And this is West Pintler. And I'm going to be working my way up over that. I suspect it's not right there, but somewhere along this ridge is Bitterroot Pass. I'll be heading over that. Here's the view looking south, and now you can see that the trail wraps around the end of that ridge instead of going over like I thought. Well, speaking of losing the trail, I was cruising along through this burn area. This is a little older burn than yesterday's, and I spotted this burn CDT sign, but just kind of smiled and kept going. Thankfully I checked my GPS just a little ways down that trail, and it said that I'd missed the trail, so I came back up because usually those CDT signs are placed at a junction. So I thought I'd come back up to where that was and take a look around. And sure enough, here's the blaze. And you can see the trail on up that hillside there. And it was only then that I looked down on the ground and saw the sign. So, lesson to self, good to be aware and pay attention. This, by the way, is that junction that I've been looking for. Only took me an hour longer to get here, but it's worth the effort. I'm a little concerned about the clouds that are coming in. Looks like potential for thunderstorms, and I still need to get up over that Bitterroot Pass, so hoping they hold off until I can do that. Not quite the payoff of a lot of passes, but there's still a lot of great views moving around the edge of that ridge. I'm going to be trying something a little risky here. The main trail goes down in that drainage, down towards Kelly and Rippa Lake. But with this burn, a person can move around fairly easily, what would normally be a difficult bushwhack. And that, right through the trees, is Hidden Lake. And it looks to me pretty clearly that there's a trail someone has made around this knob, and I'm betting that it's going to connect up and take me right over to Hidden Lake. I might deeply regret this, but if it does take me right over there without losing elevation, it'd be nice to see Hidden Lake without having to climb all the way up from Kelly Lake. A storm over there. Kind of hoping it doesn't come this way, but I think it is. Don't have any trees around to dive into. If it does, might have to set up the shelter. Well, that didn't work out. I can see once I got around that knob, the trail I was looking at actually just loops back down. It's just a hairpin going down in that valley there. And turns out this actually is the trail I'm supposed to be on, so I guess it's good that I took that little shortcut. Well, I think that storm passed to the south of me, and pretty glad to dodge that bullet. But I'm also glad to get down off that ridge because there was quite a bit of thunder going on around, and it's an exposed ridge. So still lots of dark clouds around. No rain yet though, so maybe I'll make it to Kelly Lake without the rain. So that's the ridge I just came down off from. You can see the trail slash in the knob at the end there, and I've come down in this valley, across down to the bottom there, and I have figured out that Hidden Lake is actually up in there. And the lake I've been calling Hidden Lake is actually Kelly Lake, which I really am headed for with any kind of luck. And that is right in there, that basin. So heading up there, probably be there in an hour or so, maybe less. And here's Kelly Lake. So I'm glad to finally make it to. It's about 2:15. And that, I think, is actually that Bitterroot Creek Pass, which I've been wrong twice on already. This time I think I'm right. That's Bitterroot Pass. Shouldn't take me too long to get up and over that, but I'm just hoping that storm holds off long enough to allow me to do that. I'm hearing some thunder, so cross your fingers. And here's the actual pass. Blue skies to the north, and that's the drainage I'll be heading down. Okay, here's Little Johnson Lake. I had considered camping here tonight, but I can see now that it's quite reedy around the edges, and it's only about 3:30, so not sure I really want to stop just yet. Thinking I'll climb down to the junction with I think it's Bitterroot Creek, and see if that's a good place to camp, and if not, head up to Phyllis Lakes. See what they're like. This is just on the rim of the Phyllis Lakes. After about 600 feet, Climbing up here. Wow, look at that. That's amazing. I read that there was a pretty nasty bushwhack to get down to the lower Phyllis. I'd say that was an understatement. And here is Upper Phyllis. Not too bad, huh? I think I saved the best for last. Well, that was a fairly strenuous day. It was 12 miles and 3,600 feet elevation gain and about the same loss. Cue the fish jump. Gotta love that. But in the end, it's all worth it because I'm camped at this really awesome spot at Upper Phyllis Lake. Certainly makes it worth the work to get here, and I feel really blessed to get to see such an incredible spot, much less spend time here. Well, good morning. It's a beautiful morning. I'm up early and itching to hit the trail. When I want to get an early start on the day, I usually eat breakfast without cooking. So I just dump the instant coffee into my water jug and the sugar, and mix it up good. And actually, I almost prefer it that way. Just call it iced coffee, and it goes pretty good. And I just have a quick oatmeal type energy bar, and usually some chocolate covered espresso beans. These got a little melty yesterday. I think that might be the result of hiking through a lot of burn areas, as I have been on this trip. I did forget to tell you that I did cook for dinner last night, and had a freeze-dried meal, and it's this company, Good to Go. It's the first time I've had their stuff, and it was pretty good, so I'm gonna definitely look into more of their offerings. Well, I kind of hate to leave this place, but it's good to get back on the trail, so let's hit it. Don't have too far to go today, just about 5 or 6 miles back out to the trailhead, and looking forward to the rest of the fun commute, the drive to the trail. Today, after I get back to the truck, I will be driving that Skalkaho Pass, and there's a beautiful falls on that road that I'm looking forward to seeing. So, and pizza in Hamilton. All right. That's the rim on the edge of the Phyllis Lakes, and this is the morning sun of day 3, looking down on lower Phyllis. So this is just getting back to the trail junction. Phyllis Lake was a bit of a side trip for me, although there is a trail that goes on through to Johnson Lake. But this is the main trail that I'm going to be on, back to where I'm parked. And boy, look at the awesome wildflowers just everywhere. Just gorgeous. Well, it's 11 o'clock and I'm just about back to the trailhead. I'm really happy with this hike overall, even though probably more than half of it was through burn area. Normally that's kind of misery to hike through, but the campsites really made it worthwhile, and there was a lot of beautiful country still, and nice to be able to see through the burn. That does open things up quite a bit, and wow, just gorgeous wildflowers, can't be beat. Looks like total mileage will be 27 miles with the side trips to Edith and the Phyllis Lakes. And I haven't really calculated the elevation gain altogether, but guessing around 6,000 feet total elevation gain, and the same loss because I'm coming back to the same spot. So yeah, looking forward to rinsing off in the creek and then hitting Scalcahoe Road, and I'll be sure to show that to you too.